The wine-dark sea crashed against the rugged, unfamiliar shores of an island that seemed to float, untethered in the mists of the uncharted Aegean. Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca, and his weary crew, driven far off course by vengeful storms and the wrath of gods, had sought refuge here, hoping for fresh water and sustenance. The island was lush, fertile, seemingly uninhabited at first glance. Yet an unnerving stillness hung in the air, a sense of primal power, of something ancient and watchful. As they explored a sheltered cove, they discovered a massive cave, its entrance gaping like the maw of some colossal beast, littered with the bones of wild goats and sheep, and, more disturbingly, the faint but unmistakable scent of smoke and something else. Something that hinted at a crude, powerful intelligence. This was the land of the Cyclops, a race of giants described in the earliest whispers of Greek mythology. They were said to be lawless, pastoral beings, possessing immense strength and, most terrifyingly, a single blazing eye set in the center of their foreheads. The most infamous among them was Polyphemus, son of Poseidon, a shepherd of monstrous proportions and even more monstrous appetite. Odysseus, driven by a hero's curiosity and perhaps a touch of hubris, decided to investigate the cave, taking 12 of his bravest men and a skin of strong, unmixed wine as a potential offering or tool of persuasion. What they found within confirmed their worst fears. The cave was a vast, echoing chamber, clearly the dwelling of a being of immense size. Giant cheese baskets lined the walls, pens held bleeding lambs and kids, and a huge fire pit smoldered in the center. And then Polyphemus returned. He was a terrifying spectacle, a mountain of a man, his single eye burning with a dull, brutish light above a flat, broad nose. He moved with a lumbering, powerful gait, driving his flock of giant sheep before him into the cave, then sealing the entrance with a stone so massive that 24 ordinary men could not have budged it. Trapped. The initial encounter, as immortalized in Homer's Odyssey, is one of brutal, primal horror. Polyphemus, showing no regard for the sacred laws of hospitality, seized 2 of Odysseus's men, dashed their brains out against the cave floor, and devoured them raw, washing them down with great gulps of milk. The remaining Ithacans watched in frozen terror, their escape cut off, their fate seemingly sealed. This was the Cyclops of legend, savage, cannibalistic, a force of nature anathema to civilized man. But let us pause here, at this moment of primal fear, and ask a crucial question that echoes down through millennia. What was the Cyclops? Was Polyphemus and his kin truly a monstrous, one-eyed, man-eating giant? Or is there a deeper, more complex story hidden beneath the layers of myth? A story that modern science, archaeology, and historical investigation are only now beginning to unravel. The discovery in our narrative, then, is not just Odysseus's terrifying find, but our own discovery of the multifaceted nature of the Cyclops myth itself. The immediate stakes for Odysseus and his men were life and death. But for us, the stakes are understanding how such a potent, enduring legend came to be, and what truths, historical, environmental, or psychological, it might conceal. The most straightforward interpretation, of course, is that the Cyclops were exactly as described, a relict race of one-eyed giants. Ancient Greek mythology is filled with monstrous beings and demigods existing on the fringes of the known world. In this view, Odysseus's encounter is a literal one, a testament to the perils faced by early explorers and seafarers, venturing into uncharted territories inhabited by beings beyond their comprehension. However, modern scholarship offers intriguing alternative theories. One of the most compelling, first proposed by paleontologist Othenio Abel in the early 20th century, is the elephant skull theory. The Mediterranean islands, including Sicily, often identified as the land of the Cyclops, were once home to now extinct species of dwarf elephants. The skulls of these elephants are large, and most strikingly possess a single, large, central nasal cavity right in the middle of the forehead, where the trunk would have attached. To an ancient Greek who had never seen an elephant, stumbling upon such a skull, weathered by time, might easily have been interpreted as the remains of a giant, one-eyed humanoid. The sheer size of the skull would suggest a creature of immense stature, and the central hole, where the eye of imagination might place it, would complete the picture of a Cyclops. Imagine an early Greek sailor shipwrecked on a remote island, finding one of these strange, massive skulls half buried in the sand. The single, gaping eye socket in the center of the forehead would be an arresting, terrifying sight. From such a discovery, fueled by fear and the human tendency to create narratives to explain the unknown, the legend of a race of one-eyed giants could easily have been born. The bones Odysseus and his men saw in Polyphemus's cave might not have been just those of sheep and goats, but perhaps, intermingled, were the misinterpreted fossil remains of these prehistoric elephants, further cementing the image of a giant shepherd. Another fascinating line of inquiry leads us to the realm of ancient crafts, specifically blacksmithing. In Hesiod's Theogony, a much earlier work than Homer's Odyssey, the Cyclops, Brontes, Thunderer, Steropes, Lightner, and Arges, Bright, are not savage shepherds, but primordial beings, sons of Uranus, Sky, and Gaia, Earth. They are master craftsmen, skilled smiths who forged the thunderbolts of Zeus, the trident of Poseidon, and the helm of invisibility for Hades. These elder Cyclopes are powerful, divine artisans, crucial allies to Zeus in his war against the Titans. How does this image of skilled divine smiths reconcile with Homer's monstrous cannibalistic Polyphemus? Could the legend have diverged, or could there be a connection? Blacksmithing in the ancient world was a dangerous, almost magical profession. Smiths worked with intense fire, hammering metal with immense force. Eye injuries would have been common. It's been suggested that some clans or guilds of smiths might have worn an eye patch over a lost or damaged eye, or perhaps even as a protective measure, focusing their vision with the remaining eye for precision work. A secretive, powerful group of metalworkers, perhaps physically imposing from their labor, potentially with some members bearing a single visible eye due to their craft, could have been seen as mysterious, even intimidating figures by outsiders. Over time, stories of these one-eyed master craftsmen, perhaps living in remote, volcanic regions rich in ore, often associated with caves and underground forges, could have morphed into the legend of one-eyed giants. The Cyclops name itself, meaning round eye or circle eye, could refer to the single eye, or perhaps even to the round, glaring eye, like opening of a forge. The decision to fight for survival for Odysseus was immediate and driven by his legendary cunning. He couldn't overpower Polyphemus through brute strength. The giant was too massive. He had to use his intellect. His initial steps involved a desperate gamble, offering Polyphemus the strong, unmixed wine. The giant, unused to such potent drink, greedily consumed it and quickly fell into a drunken stupor. This provided Odysseus and his surviving men their first slim chance. This act of plying Polyphemus with wine, while a key plot point in the Odyssey, also raises questions for our investigation. If the Cyclopes were truly savage, isolated beings, where would their knowledge of, or taste for, wine come from? Or was this a specific vulnerability of Polyphemus, perhaps one that Odysseus astutely observed or even provoked? While Polyphemus snored in his drunken sleep, Odysseus and his men enacted their desperate plan. They found a massive olive wood club in the cave, hardened its tip in the fire, and then, with a combined, heroic effort, they drove the sharpened, burning stake into the Cyclops' single eye, blinding him. The giant's roar of agony was said to have shaken the island to its core. The blinding of Polyphemus is a pivotal moment, rich in symbolic meaning. It's the triumph of human intellect and cunning over brute, monstrous force. But it also carries a terrible price. For Polyphemus, in his agony, calls upon his father, Poseidon, to avenge him, setting in motion the long and perilous wanderings that define the rest of Odysseus's epic journey home. As Polyphemus thrashed in blind fury, Odysseus and his men faced a new challenge: escape. The giant, though blinded, still guarded the cave entrance, his massive hands feeling for any who tried to slip past. Odysseus's ingenious solution, tying his men and himself beneath the bellies of Polyphemus's giant sheep as they were led out to pasture in the morning, is a testament to his resourcefulness. The initial mystery of the Cyclops, then, is not just, what is this creature, but what does this creature represent? Is it a literal monster, a warning about the dangers of the unknown world? Is it a distorted memory of extinct megafauna, our ancestors trying to make sense of fossils they didn't understand? Or is it a symbolic representation of a more human kind of otherness? Perhaps a powerful but isolated group of artisans, their skills and appearance setting them apart, eventually demonized in popular lore? As Odysseus and his men sail away from the island, taunting the blinded, raging Polyphemus from the safety of their ship, we are left with a powerful image of defiance and survival. But the encounter leaves deep, unsettling questions. The physical evidence within the cave, the giant's tools, his flock, the bones, supports the idea of a shepherd, albeit a monstrous one. But the alternative theories, the elephant skulls, the smithing guilds, linger in the background, suggesting that the truth of the Cyclops might be far more complex and deeply buried than a simple tale of a one-eyed giant. The stakes for Odysseus were his life and the lives of his men. For us, the stakes are unraveling a legend that has haunted the human imagination for millennia, seeking the glint of historical or scientific truth within the captivating shadows of myth. The labyrinth of this particular mystery has many entrances, and its central chamber may hold not one, but several interconnected answers. Odysseus's harrowing escape from the cave of Polyphemus, while a triumph of cunning, was far from the end of his troubles. The blinded Cyclops' anguished appeal to his father, Poseidon, god of the sea, unleashed a divine vendetta that would plague the Ithacan king for a decade, turning his journey home into an epic saga of trial and tribulation. Yet, the encounter with Polyphemus itself remains a cornerstone of the Cyclops legend, the most vivid and visceral depiction of these one-eyed giants in classical mythology. Our investigation, however, must now delve deeper, beyond Homer's dramatic narrative, to explore the grueling fight for understanding, the unraveling of clues from disparate sources that might illuminate the true origins of these enigmatic beings. The first and most prominent clue, as we've touched upon, is the physical description: giant stature and a single, central eye. The elephant skull theory, while elegant in its simplicity, faces its own challenges. While dwarf elephant and mammoth skulls have indeed been found on Mediterranean islands like Sicily, Crete, and Cyprus, all locations sometimes associated with Cyclops, would ancient Greeks automatically interpret the central nasal cavity as an eye socket? Elephants, though not native to mainland Greece in classical times, were not entirely unknown. Alexander the Great famously encountered war elephants in his campaigns, and earlier Greeks would have known of them from contact with Egypt and the Near East. Would they not recognize the overall structure of an elephantine skull, even a smaller, fossilized one? Perhaps. But context is crucial. Imagine a lone shepherd or fisherman, isolated on a remote island, stumbling upon a massive, weathered skull unlike anything they had ever seen. Without prior knowledge of elephant anatomy, the large, central opening, where the fleshy trunk would have been, could indeed be the most striking feature, easily interpreted as a single, enormous eye socket, especially if the tusk sockets were less prominent or damaged. The surrounding bone structure might then be mentally reconstructed to fit this one-eyed giant hypothesis. The very act of discovery by individuals unfamiliar with such remains could lead to a powerful, fear-inducing narrative. Furthermore, the giant aspect of the Cyclops is key. These prehistoric island elephants, while dwarf compared to their mainland cousins, were still substantial creatures, far larger than any native land mammals on those islands. Their fossilized bones would suggest beings of impressive, even monstrous, size to those who unearth them. Combine a giant skull with a single central eye, and the seeds of the Cyclops legend are sown. The historical investigation into paleontological discoveries in the Mediterranean continues to provide circumstantial support for this theory. Archaeologists have found such fossils in caves and rock shelters, places that could easily be imagined as the lairs of giants. Let's turn to the alternative, or perhaps complementary theory. The Cyclops as master smiths. Hesiod's Theogony, predating Homer, paints a very different picture. Here, the Cyclops, Brontes, Thunderer, Steropes, Lightner, and Argus, Shining, are not savage shepherds but primordial titans, sons of Uranus and Gaia. They are described as strong and of great and of terrible force, and crucially, in all else they were like the gods. But one eye only was set in the midst of their foreheads. These elder Cyclopes were initially imprisoned by their father Uranus, then by Cronus, but were eventually freed by Zeus. In gratitude, they forged Zeus's iconic thunderbolts, Poseidon's trident, and Hades' helm of invisibility, becoming essential armorers to the Olympian gods in their war against the Titans. This portrayal presents a stark contrast to the brutish Polyphemus. These are beings of immense skill, power, and even a form of divine artistry. How do we reconcile these two traditions? Perhaps the Homeric Cyclopes, like Polyphemus, represent a later, degenerated, or entirely separate branch of the Cyclopean race. Or more intriguingly, perhaps the one eye of the smithing Cyclopes was a symbolic or occupational marker that, over time and through storytelling, became literalized and monstrous in the popular imagination. Consider the ancient craft of blacksmithing. It was a vital, almost magical skill, transforming raw ore into tools, weapons, and art. Forges were often located in remote areas, near sources of ore or fuel, sometimes in caves or mountainous regions, fitting the traditional layers of Cyclopes. The work was incredibly arduous, requiring immense physical strength. Smiths indeed be powerful individuals. The intense heat, the flying sparks, the deafening clang of hammer on anvil. It was a dangerous profession. Eye injuries, as mentioned, would have been a constant risk. A master smith, or a guild of smiths, perhaps distinguished by wearing a patch over a lost eye, or even by a ritualistic marking or tattoo resembling a single eye, symbolizing focused vision or divine inspiration, could have become legendary figures. The Cyclops name, Circle Eye, or Round Eye, could then refer not just to a single median eye, but perhaps to the intense, focused gaze of a craftsman, or even, as some scholars have proposed, to the round opening of the forge itself, the fiery eye from which power and creation emerged. The association with thunder and lightning, Brontes, Steropes, is also highly suggestive. The striking of hammer on anvil in a reverberating forge could easily evoke the sound of thunder, and the bright flashes of superheated metal could resemble lightning. These divine smiths, then, were masters of fire and thunder, their craft seen as a harnessing of primordial elemental forces. The historical investigation into ancient metallurgy and smithing practices across the Mediterranean and Near East reveals the high status and often secretive nature of early metalworkers. They possessed knowledge and skills that were both essential and, to the uninitiated, mysterious. Guilds of smiths often had their own rituals, patrons, and perhaps even distinct physical appearances or markings. It's conceivable that tales of these powerful, somewhat reclusive, and potentially one-eyed, literally or symbolically, craftsmen could have contributed to the Cyclops myth, particularly the Hesiodic tradition of the divine artisans. The grueling fight for Odysseus was literal, a desperate struggle for survival. But the grueling fight for us is to sift through these layers of myth, folklore, paleontology, and historical craft. The connection between the monstrous shepherd Polyphemus and the divine smiths Brontes, Steropes, and Arge is not immediately obvious. Perhaps Homer's Cyclops were a later, more primitive offshoot, or a complete reimagining of an older tradition. Or perhaps Polyphemus represents the wild, untamed aspect of primordial power, a stark contrast to the more civilized, though still formidable power, of the elder Cyclops who served the Olympians. The archaeological record from sites associated with early metalworking sometimes reveals evidence of intense heat, specialized tools, and fortified locations, suggesting that these were important and perhaps jealously guarded centers of production. If such a site, perhaps abandoned, were later discovered, with its massive forge stones, some ancient forges were built with very large, roughly circular stones, and tools of unusual size or strength. It might also fuel tales of giant smiths. The developing connection or behavior of Polyphemus towards Odysseus and his men is one of pure, unadulterated hostility and predatory instinct. There is no attempt at communication beyond the most basic, no recognition of the sacred laws of hospitality, xenia, which were paramount in ancient Greek society. This utter lack of civilized behavior is what marks him as truly monstrous in the Homeric narrative. He is the antithesis of the Greek ideal of the cultured host. This extreme portrayal serves to heighten the heroism and cunning of Odysseus, who must overcome not just a physical giant, but a being devoid of human empathy. However, if we consider the possibility that the Polyphemus story is a highly dramatized and perhaps distorted account of an encounter with a more human, albeit still formidable and hostile, chieftain or isolated group, the clues take on a different light. The cave could be a fortified dwelling. The giant sheep could simply be a particularly large and well-tended flock belonging to a powerful local leader. The cannibalism might be a fearful exaggeration of a harsh or threatening reception, or a ritualistic practice misinterpreted by outsiders. The single eye could be a prominent scar, a tribal marking, or even a particularly intense and unsettling gaze from a leader who was physically intimidating. The rising complexity of the Cyclops myth is evident in these divergent traditions. We have the monstrous pastoral Cyclops of Homer, driven by base appetites. We have the divine artisan Cyclops of Hesiod, creators of godly weapons. And we have the intriguing paleontological and craft-based theories that suggest real-world phenomena could have been the seeds for these extraordinary tales. It's unlikely that one single explanation accounts for all aspects of the Cyclops legend. More probably, it's a composite myth, woven from multiple threads, encounters with strange fossils, observations of powerful but reclusive craftsmen, tales of hostile encounters in remote lands, and the universal human tendency to create monsters, to explain the unknown, and to embody our deepest fears. As our investigation deepens, we must consider how these different threads might intertwine. Could the fear, inspired by discovering giant, one-eyed skulls, have been projected onto stories already circulating about powerful, intimidating smiths or hostile barbarian tribes? Or did tales of divine, one-eyed artisan gods later become rusticized and monstrous in popular folklore, leading to the figure of Polyphemus? The true depth of the mystery is not just identifying a single origin, but understanding the process of myth-making itself, how disparate elements can coalesce over centuries to create such an enduring and terrifying figure. The Cyclops' eye, whether a physical attribute, a symbolic mark, or a misinterpretation of ancient bones, continues to stare out at us from the depths of myth, challenging us to look beyond the surface and uncover the complex truths it may conceal. The climax of Odysseus's encounter with Polyphemus, the blinding of the giant and the daring escape beneath the sheep, is a masterclass in cunning and desperate courage. It solidifies Odysseus's reputation as a hero, capable of outwitting even the most formidable monstrous foes. Yet, for our investigation into the true nature of the Cyclops, this climax is also a turning point, shifting the focus from the immediate horror of the encounter to the lasting impact of the legend and the ongoing quest to decipher its origins. The resolution for Odysseus is escape, albeit one that incurs the wrath of Poseidon. For us, the resolution lies in synthesizing the diverse clues and theories into a more comprehensive understanding of what the Cyclops might truly represent. Let's revisit the crucial piece of evidence: the single eye. We've explored the compelling theory of misidentified dwarf elephant or mammoth skulls. The sheer visual impact of such a find on an ancient mind cannot be overstated. Consider the island of Cyprus, where numerous pygmy elephant and pygmy hippopotamus fossils have been discovered in caves. Ancient Cypriots, encountering these remains, might well have woven tales of monstrous, single-eyed beings inhabiting these subterranean lairs. The bones themselves become a form of environmental forensic evidence, pointing towards a plausible naturalistic origin for a key aspect of the myth. The discovery of such fossils by early Greeks, long before the development of paleontology as a science, would have demanded an explanation, and a monstrous, giant herdsman like Polyphemus is a terrifyingly vivid one. Then there's the tradition of the elder Cyclops, the divine smiths. The historical investigation into ancient metalworking cultures provides further fertile ground. The power of smiths in early societies was immense. They were the creators of tools that enabled agriculture, weapons that decided wars, and art that adorned temples. This power, coupled with the fiery, dangerous, and often secretive nature of their craft, could easily have led to them being viewed with a mixture of awe, respect, and fear. If, as suggested, eye injuries were common, or if a single eye, or a representation of one, was a guild mark, then the one-eyed attribute becomes an occupational hazard or a symbol of their unique status, later literalized and exaggerated in myth. The enduring image of the Cyclops, forging thunderbolts for Zeus in the heart of a volcano, often Mount Etna in Sicily, another traditional Cyclopean haunt, beautifully merges the smithing tradition with the raw, elemental power attributed to these beings. The rhythmic clang of their hammers, the roar of the forge, the brilliant flashes of light, these are the sounds and sights of creation and destruction, easily associated with divine power and monstrous strength. Archaeological finds of ancient slag heaps, remnants of primitive forges, and unusually large or robust tools in areas associated with Cyclopean myths could be interpreted as further, albeit circumstantial, support for this connection. These artifacts become clues to a forgotten industrial past that might have been mythologized. The psychological aspect of the Cyclops myth is also profound. The single eye, often described as glaring or unblinking, can be seen as a potent symbol of focused, almost terrifying, power, or alternatively, of a lack of normal human perception and empathy. Polyphemus's inability to see Odysseus's cunning, his reliance on brute strength, his violation of Xenia, sacred hospitality, all point to a creature operating outside the norms of human society, a true other. This otherness is a common theme in monster myths across cultures, often representing societal fears of the unknown, the uncivilized, or those who do not conform. The very act of Odysseus blinding Polyphemus, while a strategic necessity for escape, is also symbolically potent. It is the triumph of human intellect, metis, over raw, untamed force, bia. By depriving the Cyclops of his sight, Odysseus neutralizes his primary advantage and exposes his vulnerability. This could be read as a metaphor for humanity's own journey of enlightenment, overcoming primal fears and brute nature through cunning, reason, and cooperation. The lasting impact of the Cyclops legend is undeniable. It has permeated Western literature, art, and popular culture for millennia. From the terrifying antagonist in the Odyssey to a recurring motif in Renaissance paintings, romantic poetry, and modern fantasy, the image of the one-eyed giant endures. This very endurance suggests that the myth taps into something fundamental in the human psyche. So, what is the resolution to our mystery? Was the Cyclops a literal one-eyed giant, a misidentified elephant skull, or a mythologized blacksmith? The most satisfying answer is likely a combination of these elements, a testament to the rich, syncretic nature of myth-making. It's highly plausible that encounters with puzzling fossil remains provided a powerful visual template. Tales of formidable, perhaps occupationally one-eyed smiths, possessing near-magical skills and immense strength, could have contributed another layer. Stories brought back by sailors and explorers of encounters with isolated, hostile, and physically imposing tribal groups on remote islands might have added to the narrative. Over centuries, these disparate threads, paleontological misinterpretation, occupational folklore, travelers' tales, and underlying psychological archetypes, could have woven together to create the rich and terrifying tapestry of the Cyclops legend as we know it. The story of Polyphemus, specifically, serves as a powerful narrative anchor, crystallizing these various elements into a single, unforgettable encounter. His pastoral setting links him to the land, his giant stature and single eye to the monstrous, and his savage behavior to the uncivilized other. What we learn from this investigation is not just about the potential origins of a specific myth, but about the very process by which humanity makes sense of its world. In the absence of scientific explanation, our ancestors used narrative and imagination to interpret baffling phenomena, to personify their fears, and to explore the boundaries between the human and the monstrous, the civilized and the wild. The Cyclops' eye, in this sense, becomes a lens through which we can view the ancient world's attempts to understand itself and its place in a vast, often terrifying cosmos. The legacy of the Cyclops also reminds us of the importance of critical thinking and the re-examination of long-held beliefs. What was once accepted as a literal truth or a terrifying possibility can, with new knowledge from fields like paleontology, archaeology, and anthropology, be reinterpreted, revealing a more nuanced and often more fascinating story. The monster can become a misidentified fossil. The savage giant can be a reflection of societal anxieties or a distorted memory of a misunderstood group. The tale of Odysseus and Polyphemus, therefore, is more than just an adventure story. It's a journey into the heart of myth-making itself. It challenges us to look beyond the surface, to question our assumptions, and to appreciate the complex interplay of experience, imagination, and cultural transmission that shapes the stories we tell ourselves about the world and its wonders and its terrors. Stories like that of the Cyclops, born from the mists of antiquity, continue to captivate us because they touch upon enduring human themes, the fear of the unknown, the struggle between intellect and brute force, and our unending quest to understand our origins and the nature of reality. If this exploration into the eye of the Cyclops has sparked your curiosity, please consider liking this video and sharing it, so these fascinating inquiries into the heart of myth can reach a wider audience. Your support helps us continue to delve into these ancient mysteries. And don't forget to subscribe to our Myth Story channel for more journeys into the fascinating, often surprising truths hidden within the world's greatest legends. The Cyclops may have been blinded, but his legend continues to open our eyes to the incredible power of myth and the enduring human drive to explore, to question, and to understand.